Today is the 7th day of Adar, and there's a tradition that on the 7th day of Adar, it was Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday. Moshe Rabbeinu, the one that gave us the Torah, took us out of Egypt, the prophet of all prophets. So it's actually the day that he was born and the day that he went to heaven. He lived a full 120 years from day to day. And it's actually connected a little bit to the month of Adar and the story of Purim. I'm not going to go off the subject, just finish it. And that is, we know that the wicked Haman, he wanted to destroy all of the Jews, but he was also like a magician, an astrologer. And he was looking for a lucky month that would be for his side. So when he was throwing dice, it fell on the month of Adar and on the 7th day. And he was very excited. This is the day that the great leader Moses died. So he said, for sure, this is my month. But says the Gemara, little did he know that he was also born on this day. So you only had half the story, you know. So actually, it's a Mazel Dika month. But anyway, it's a very special day because it's brought down. We all know that we have fathers and mothers in the physical. We also have spiritual fathers and mothers. So we have Abraham Avinu, right? Abraham, our father, Sarah Imenu, Sarah, our mother. Yitzchak Avinu, Rivka Imenu. Yaakov Avinu, right? Rachel and Leah. But there's also a touch of Moshe in every person as well. A little bit of Moses inside of every person. And which is interesting because in the Kabbalists, when they talk about it, they're referring to the idea of fearing God or knowledge of God. But maybe it's also including the capacity to make miracles. In any case, today is his birthday, so happy birthday. Okay, and I'm sure Moshe is very happy that we're studying the Torah, that he was the one that basically wrote down. Okay, so once again, good morning. We are ready to continue. We're going to do probably only one verse today, so it's on page 11. And the verse that we will try to study is verse number 7. But let me remind you again about where we're holding in the Chumash, okay? So I believe it was last week or perhaps the last 2 weeks, we spoke a little bit that the first chapter of the Torah is a description of the 6 days of creation, right? What took place and the 7th day. Chapter 2 now goes into the details. But it's all written by the same Hashem, obviously. Okay. What changes with the second chapter is not only the details, but also the name of God. Where in the first chapter, the name of Hashem is the 5-lettered name of Hashem, Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem, which we interpret as the way God reveals himself in nature. But already in chapter 2, we have the verse of Hashem Elokim in verse 4, where there's now, another name of Hashem which is uttered and mentioned, which refers to God who creates time, or God who creates actually existence, the concept of the miracle. We also mentioned that rain, which is a tremendous blessing, comes because of man and through man, in contrast to dew, D-E-W, which comes as a gift from God. So before man was created, it did not rain, because there's a type of a relationship that when man deserves it, or when man lifts his eyes to heaven to say, Hashem, we need Geshem, we need rain, that's when it rains. Okay, those are some of the things that we spoke about. Now let's read verse 7. Vayitzar Hashem Elokim, and Hashem Elokim, again, both names, right, formed, and the Hashem God formed Es ha'adam, man, Ofer min ha'adama, earth from the ground, or dust from the ground, Vayipach ba'arpav, he blew into his nostrils, Nishmas Chaim, a neshama, a breath of life. I see in the English he puts it, a soul of life. Vayihi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. And man became nefesh chaya, a living being. Okay, so this is probably a very concise. This is actually both a very clear verse, but also a bit of a perplexing verse, because we have over here nishmas chayim, right? We have a living soul, right? And we also have the word nefesh chaya, a living being. Okay, I don't know if you can read the Hebrew, but do we have before a creation that's called nefesh chaya? Well, perhaps I'll show it to you. Okay, so if you look on verse 7, I'm sorry, page 7, and it's verse 24. Now, this is talking about the creation of animals. Okay, everyone have it? Page 7, verse 24, or in the Hebrew, Pasuk Chav Daled. Vayomer Elokim, and God said, Totzei ha'aretz nefesh chaya limina. Let living creatures come out according to its species, animals and crawling insects, and it was so. So we already know that there's something called nefesh chaya, a living being or a living creature. What's different, and again, if you look on the same page on verse 20, even when we're talking about fish, Vayomer Elokim, verse 20, Hashem said, Yishutzu hamayim sheretz nefesh chaya, let the waters be filled with living creatures. So nefesh chaya, right, a living creature, is used in terms of animals and fish. Okay. Now let's go back to verse 7. Is there any difference between the way God created life in man than the way he created life by animals? Okay, so over here what comes up is the word nishmas chayim. Okay, if what you said is correct, that what makes it different over here is nishmas chayim, correct? Then why do we say and man became nefesh chaya? Shouldn't it be vayihi ha'adam, l'neshama chayim? In other words, if what makes him unique is his neshama, why is he referred to nefesh? In Hebrew, there are many words which are different, but in English, they sometimes have the same English translation. Like nefesh could be seen as soul, neshama can be seen as soul, sometimes the word ruach or spirit. But in Hebrew, these are very different terms. So let me try to say it in a slightly different form. What the Torah is teaching us is essentially that there are aspects of a human being which are going to be similar to the way creation of the natural was. And then there's a uniqueness of man. Now, in chapter 1, we spoke at length that Hashem said, let us create man in our form, in our image. But it didn't really give any details. Here we have a detail. What is different about man? That he has a nishmas chayim, he has a soul that's alive, and where did it come from? Vayipach ba'apav, it was blown into him. Okay. First, let me give you two definitions of the word nefesh chaya, which he translated as a living being. I'll make it quite simple. How do you know if something is alive?
Moving.
Okay, breathing. Let me talk about moving, because actually breathing is movement. Right? Unless there's movement, If there is no movement, we consider it lifeless. Once it moves, right, we say it is alive. Clearly, trees are alive, right? Grass is alive. Animals are alive. Fish are alive. And yet we see a difference between a tree that's growing, which is alive, and a fish that's alive. Because we associate correctly life with movement. The more movement, the more life. Okay? So when Hashem creates man, and man now is capable of moving, because as we're going to read very soon, God takes earth, right? And he forms man out of earth. So at that moment, it was just a dummy. It was just a, what we call it, a form. As soon as man began to move, he was alive. So nefesh chaya, a living being, means that he was able to move. But that man should be able to move is not yet his crowning glory. Because actually, if that were to be the case, animals and maybe birds would be superior to us. They can move faster and with greater enthusiasm and so on. So there's something which makes man, within Nefesh Chaya, something different. What makes it different is his neshama. Okay. Where does this neshama come from? Obviously, from Hashem. So again, look at verse 7. Hashem created man from earth and then blew into him a soul of life. So really, there are two parts to man. The earthly part and the, what we'll call for now, the godly or the soulful part. Now Rashi brings a very interesting midrash. On the first day of creation, Hashem created something in heaven, something on earth. We call it, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. On the second day of creation, God did not create anything on earth. He merely separated the waters. So it's as if to say, he worked with heaven. Now, that if you were keeping score, that would mean God is spending more time creating things in heaven than he is on earth. First day he created heaven and earth, both equal. Second day he created separation of water, that's above. So Hashem says, no, on the third day, I'll create things from the ground. So there's dry land, things are growing. So now we're equal. On the fourth day, what does God create? The sun and the moon and the heaven. Where is that? That's again only in heaven. So it's not even anymore. Hashem is showing more preference for heavenly things. So what happens on the fifth day? Hashem creates fish, right, and birds. Now, were Hashem to create on the sixth day animals and man formed from the earth, earth would have one more than heaven. So Rashi quotes this interesting medrash. God gave him a soul from heaven, right? So now it's equal. Just like the first day of creation, there was something of heaven and earth. The sixth day of creation, there's something on earth, which is really all the earthly creatures, including the earthliness of man, but he also has a soul from heaven, so there's a balance. Clearly, there's a lot of there are deep messages being conveyed over here. I mean, what are we talking? That the angels are keeping score like bingo or something? You know, God, the one. But suffice to say that based even on a very superficial reading of the Medrash, what happens with the creation of man is he brings creation into a balance. One cannot say that creation is all about the spiritual one cannot say that that creation is only about the material, about the physical. The creation, the existence itself, is a balance, a mixture of heaven and earth together. Where do we see heaven and earth? There are certain creatures that God created which seem to be more heavenly, like the sun and the moon. There are also certain creatures which seem to be more earthly, like an elephant. And then there is a creature which brings out heaven and earth simultaneously. One is really not more than the other, and that is man. Okay. So I interpreted nefesh chaya means the soul chaya that's able to move. And in this case, it's not any different than any other nefesh chaya of animals and of birds. What makes him different is his neshama. But the Targum has a little bit of a different interpretation, and then I'll give you the Hasidic interpretation. The Targum's interpretation is that Nefesh Chaya doesn't mean, and God made him with the potential to move, because that would not distinguish him from animals. Nefesh Chaya means God gave him a living soul or a living being so he can speak. Now this opens up a brand new concept, and that is the supremacy of man over all parts of creation is his capacity to speak. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but let me again take a step back. We live in a world where, if heaven forbid you take God out of the picture, right? In other words, you don't want to talk about the world or creation or man in terms of God. You want to talk about it like man evolving, man figuring this out, man figuring that out. You know, we're civilized. Animals are not civilized. There are certain more civilization, less civilization. If we leave out, which of course is not a Jewish perspective, and you ask a person without putting God into the picture, what is man superior to an animal? And they might say yes, based on this capacity to think, okay, or to reason. So they'll say it's primarily the way he thinks, okay? I would tell you that actually that's only a partial answer. Did you ever hear the expression in English, deaf and dumb? Mm-hmm. Okay, what does deaf and dumb mean? Deaf means he can't hear. Dumb means he can't speak. Is there anything wrong with his mind? No. It's very interesting. We call dumb in two different ways. Someone who cannot speak is called dumb. And then I didn't look up in the dictionary, but I think it's used constantly. He's a dummy, or he's dumb, means he has no brains, like he's not thinking.
The same spelling?
Same spelling, yeah, same spelling, same spelling. Yeah, D-U-M-B. Basically,
they don't say it anymore.
Yeah, because it's not correct to say, but that's basically, you know, the meaning behind it. Actually, in our tradition, intelligence on its own really doesn't count unless you could share that intelligence. In other words, what makes a person human is not that he could think, because every animal probably has some type of a thinking capacity. We don't know what exactly they're thinking, and we assume that they don't think what we think. So we assume that a lion doesn't think about what happens when I get old. We, when we're 12 years old, think about that. Okay. And that was it. You see, we're capable of thinking about the future, about the past. An animal doesn't think about what did his great-grandfather look like. Well, we could do that. But one could challenge this and say, so that makes us superior, makes us dumber. We're thinking about everything that has nothing to do with life. If we only thought about the immediate needs, how we could prepare for ourselves shelter and enjoyment, we'd be much better off. In other words, you could argue that. So you could say, what makes man fantastically great, is we are superior in intelligence. And what makes you so sure?
No, we don't know that
Okay,
either.
right.
Right?
In addition to which, we really don't know. We assume, and I think it's probably a reasonable assumption, that we are the most intelligent creatures on earth, but how do we know? Maybe there's another creature that's intelligent. Certainly, we think about outer space, and I've touched upon this one of the earlier classes, like aliens or life in other planets. We have no problem accepting that they might be far more superior in intelligence. So actually, what makes, yeah.
It's the same like especially students. One can think that he's smarter than this one, but when he
Talks.
and when he meets somebody who is really smarter, he will understand that that person is smarter, and it can be like a link.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Every time we can find a person who is.
I will tell you again, this comes from the Targum, but the way Hasidus understands it. What makes man superior, and again, I'm leaving God out of the picture just for one moment. Maybe we should remind ourselves, what makes man special is God made us special, okay? He gave us a soul, a neshama. That's the answer. But if we won't approach man from that perspective, and we approach man looking at from earth eyes, right? Earthly eyes, we would say that man seems to be superior because of intelligence, and then we said maybe not. No, what makes man superior is his capacity to speak. Not only capacity to speak and communicate, but to build with speech. Let me go over this again, okay? And this, in essence, this is it could easily go into a completely different lecture about what is speech, what is language. So, very, very briefly, when we talk about speaking, a synonym would be communication. To communicate from what's within yourself to the outside. Do animals speak to one another?
Yes.
Of course. They communicate very well with one another.
They have their own language.
They have their own language. So, what is the difference between man's language and the language of the animals?
Difference?
Is the difference between man's language and a bird's language the difference between English and, let's say, Swahili or Chinese? Is that the difference?
Yes.
No.
No, I think it's
I don't think so.
a different difference.
So you tell me, what's the different?
Well,
In other words, there's a qualitative difference.
yeah, people speaking with words, it can be written, and the animals, they speak with some kind of sounds, big sounds, or maybe something that we don't even can hear, like birds, they maybe communicate with something that we cannot hear.
Okay, so you said two things. I want to emphasize one of the two. Okay, Valeria, what she said is that when we communicate with words. They don't communicate with words. Words have letters in it. Okay, so
Thinking, I think.
what?
Thinking is a difference. Man can think, but birds are like instincts.
How do you know what they're thinking?
True.
Maybe they have these little pictures, like little captions you see in the zoo, right? And you see one monkey saying to another one, "Look at the funny one." The way you're looking at the monkey, how do you know the monkey's not looking at us in the same way? Look at the funny one. Oh, he's funny. Well, I bet you he's going to throw me a banana. Let's see. He did. Okay. I'm not arguing. I do believe that we think differently. I'm just saying that I don't know if there's a way for us You understand? To actually gauge it or measure it. And incidentally, I mean, I'll get back to language, because I think that's really crucial and important. But incidentally, when we think of man superior based on intelligence, that would then mean as follows. The closer the animal or the bird or the fish is to our intelligence, the closer they are to being human. And then it's like this. You're allowed to eat an animal or a bird, you know what I mean, if it doesn't think like a person. But if it's already thinking like a person, I mean, it's weird. And that's what we will have over here is, how many people do you have in your household? Or how many? So some people today, without batting an eyelid, will put down 3. Husband, wife, dog. And they will, no, without batting, I'm not trying to be, facetious. It thinks like us, it's in our bedroom, it's almost smarter than us. They communicate perfectly well, but you find out that they also have goldfish. But they don't put goldfish as the household, because in their mind, the goldfish has no brains. You know what I mean? Or something like that, or they have a pet hamster. But we've come to the concept that if you're going to measure intelligence as what makes a person human, it should follow that the more animals think, the closer they are to humans, and the separation becomes very blurry. Becomes very, very blurry. So now the question is, what should you save in a fire? An intelligent, eye-seeing dog, or a person who has Alzheimer's? Who's more intelligent? You understand? Suddenly you start measuring, you start scratching your head. I don't know what's more important anymore. Which one is more human, or which one is... Okay, so it's not intelligence.
The opposite is also true. It's about Mowgli.
About what?
Mowgli. Kids.
Yeah.
They do not speak.
Very good point.
And they closer to animal.
Yeah. If we were to do it with intelligence, so then we would have humans less human as well. Okay, so we're not going to go there, even from a purely materialistic perspective. But even using the purely material, the purely human or physical, the idea of using language not only to communicate feelings or desires, but to create through words. We'll start off with some very simple things, okay? You read a good book, and you're lost in the story, and either it makes you feel great because it's a great story, it can make you sad because it's a sad story, it could take you out of this world, it's a science fiction story. Essentially, we could have, and in fact, from a book which never happened, you could walk around completely changed because of the book that you read. So if I took a horrible, extreme example, if you read a book about, let's say, some type of person who was tortured horribly by people, it never happened. He lives in Beverly Hills, he's great. But he has a Michigana, and he wrote this book. You actually walk away shaken, you get nightmares, and so it didn't happen. Words can create a reality. When it comes to both compliments and insults, we see that very, very powerfully. Someone tells you you're ugly, someone tells you you're stupid, God forbid, someone tells you something else. It's not true. You know it's not true. Everyone else knows it's not true. But because the words are there and you keep on hearing those words in your mind, that's the way it is. And of course, the beauty of a compliment. There's nothing in the natural world as we know it that can build or destroy without using any physical energy other than language. That's remarkable. That is absolutely remarkable. Not only that, just on a parallel point, certainly in the 20th century, but probably even before, wars were won or lost not on the battlefield, but through speech. If you could get a person to speak, inspire, give a reason why we have to do this, they followed. And even if the cause was righteous, but they couldn't say it, they couldn't articulate it, you understand, there was no language to explain why should we willing to give our life for the country? Why should we accept rationing? For what? For a war? It's not my war. And then you hear a president or a general talk how important freedom is and this and that, and then suddenly you're willing to do it.
Diplomacy is important.
Of course, diplomacy. Language is human. And powerful. But now we have to say the truth. Language is divine. It's really from God. Because how did God create heaven and earth? He spoke. Let there be light. So God himself used language, letters and words to create existence and to nourish it till today through those words. Man is created in God's image, so man has the capacity to build worlds, destroy worlds, sustain and nourish just through language. Now, they often go together, but not always. Often, intelligent people speak intelligently. Often. But not always. These are two separate gifts. And actually, if you really want to know, the gift of speech, of language, is actually a higher form of godly manifestation than just thinking. We Jewish people, we have 3,300 years of them coming together. To the extent, when we study Torah, we're told, don't read it to make a separation like you read a newspaper. Have you ever gone and see a person read the newspaper and he's reading the words by, you say, no, he looks crazy if he does that. One of the things we tell our children is, you don't have to say it, just read it. When it comes to Torah, we're actually told, say the words, and it's even better if you could hear it, which goes against everything else. I mean, when we constantly get tremendous information by reading. Torah is not information. Torah is connecting to beyond the physical or beyond the material. Torah is a connection to God. It has to be used through the godly instrument that God gave us, which is really speech. And speech and intelligence goes together. So now when it says God created man from the earth, so he's going to get two parts to him. There's going to be something about his earthly part and something about the soul which he's going to receive. So if we talk about the earthly part, God makes him alive. The first interpretation was that he moves. So in that sense, he's not the only one that has a nefesh chaya. We just looked a couple of minutes ago. We saw the very same words of living creature is used by other things as well. And in this case, man and animal are very similar. The second interpretation is God made man a living being, so now he could receive a higher form of life. It's not movement. It's actually language. P.S. You could look at language as movement. First of all, even when we talk to one another, you know what we use? A good speaker could move you. We actually use language in the sense of movement. And I could tell you I myself speak a lot, but I mean, all of us know that by speaking, you could get yourself angry. By speaking, you could get yourself to cry. just thinking could do that, but speech is much more powerful. In other words, you could actually create an emotion and move an emotion move an emotion just by speech itself. Again, P.S. footnote, in today, one of the many ways that mental health professionals help people, one of the ways they do it is by telling you, you know, you should have affirmations. I want you to say 10 times in the morning, I am a good guy. I am capable. Before you go into the, you know, instead of being all anxious, and they actually say, I want you to say it. I know it, but I don't feel it. That's my problem. I know I have a PhD. I could be a great whatever, but I freeze up when I get, and then they tell you, use language. Actually say the words. Say it over and over, many times over the day. It's almost as if the language could move you, could mold you, can change you. Okay. So, Vayi Adam L'Nefesh Chaya means that man became a speaker.
But soul and language is the same time, or what?
Yeah. Again.
Soul means that man has language, right?
No.
Not only, but at the same time.
At the same, in other words, every human who's alive, Nefesh Chaya means he has the capacity to speak. Yeah, correct. However, we haven't yet defined holy speech, not holy speech. That's something that has to be acquired over a lifetime. However, now we get to the Hasidic interpretation. Okay, so we have like this. Man has a part of him which is heavenly. He has a part of him which is earthly. The earthly part, according to some, only means that he can move. According to others, the earthly part of man is his superiority of language of speaking. But it's still the earthly part. Then you ask, does that come with the soul, without the soul? In essence, it comes together with the soul, but it's still considered a human quality. Right? But now we're going to go, what is the spiritual quality, or what is the heavenly quality of man? And the answer is, God blew into man nishmas chayim. So first we have to define, he says neshama is soul. What's the Hebrew word of neshama? What does it mean? You say soul, but is there a Hebrew meaning to the word?
Spirit?
No, though you're close. In modern Hebrew, it means to breathe. It's a breath. Linshom means to take a breath. But so when we say a soul of life, what we're really saying is God blew into man a breath of life. Not, you could say the word spirit of life, but a breath of life. You see a person on the floor, he collapses. You do CPR, you give him a kvetch on his heart, and you blow air into this person. You could do the CPR with your hand a lot longer than blowing. Blowing exhausts you. Because when you blow, you're literally taking from deep within yourself a life energy of oxygen, and carbon dioxide, of course, but of oxygen, and you're expelling it. And you can't do that indefinitely. It takes too much out of you. But you could go like this for a very, very long time. If you ever were lucky enough to have a birthday party for your 6-year-old, and she says to you, I want 26 balloons. After the 3rd balloon, you say, Tatala, I love you. Maybe I'll give you another lollipop. I don't have the strength. How do you blow 26 balloons? Thank God we have today pumpers. Yeah? It's very tiring. Very tiring. Why? Again, why is it tiring? Because it's mamish, literally taking from deep within you. When we say that Hashem blew into man a breath of life, what we're really conveying is it's an extraordinary image. God took something of his own being, of his essence, his life, and he blew it into every single Jewish person. Now I say I'll be a Jewish person because it's a different discussion about what kind of a soul does a non-Jew have. But I'd like to right now just keep on concentrating on the way we're reading the Chumash, okay, of a Jewish person. So every Jewish person, and this comes from the 2nd chapter of Tanya, a wonderful definition, every Jewish person has a chelek elokah, a part of God, mimal, that comes from above, mamash, and it becomes literally his being, his existence. So as odd and as confusing as it may sound, everyone in this room is really a piece of God. If you could use the word piece, because God cannot be divided, but is a part of God, but in a very, very literal way. So clearly, there is absolutely no continuum. There's nothing at all that connects us to the animal world. We are superior or different because there's a part of God's being inside of us that no other part of creation has. And guess what? That includes even angels. The soul of a man, collectively, of human beings, is much greater than the soul or the life force of an angel. So when we use the word soul in English, it's been misinterpreted many ways. So we have soul music. We got, I don't know if you remember this, maybe you're young enough to remember this, there was soul food, with Afro hair. I mean, I don't know, is there such a thing called soul food, soul music? It depends how you use the word soul, okay? It has a little soul to it. What do you mean a little soul to it? It has a little neshama to it. Well, what does that mean? In other words, the way we use the word soul, we actually mean to say a deep level of life. Something which is extraordinary alive. Soul music, soul this, soul that. Tell me the soul of this,
When people say that's soulful.
Yeah, good. That's soulful. I mean, again, it's very meaningful. It touches me. Okay, but that's not the way Hasidus interprets the word neshama. You understand? It's not, soul music is not the breath of God. So what makes a human being special is we are created in God's image. What gives Jewish people the eternity that me and you are till today, from thousands of years and will continue again forever as God continues forever, is the fact that we all have a neshama, a part of God. And the word is literally. Okay. That's why it's expressed as Hashem blew. This is the first time we know that God blows. We know that God talks. So he's been talking the whole time. Let there be light, let there be animals, let there be this, let there be that. He's using breath. But how is he using the breath? In the language, which I told you is a divine thing, language. Now we're going to something deeper. It's not even language. It's a deep breath that goes into language, and it goes beyond language. So, for example, even today, I could tell you, how are things? Not so good. Or I could go, oh. If I go, oh, you know what I'm talking about. I didn't say a word. I just gave an expressed, right? And in a good way. How are things? Whoo! Something like that, Just the breath, in many ways, can actually express more than even language or the words, because the soul of language is actually breath, and breath is literally coming from the one who's uttering it. Okay, so again, until the creation of Adam, the first man, we have Hashem speaking. There's spirit, and we had already the Spirit of God hovering over the water. So you understand, we know there's something called spirit. At least we accept it. We're not sure what it means, but we know what it's not. It's not physical. But here we have neshama. And Hashem by Yipach Ba'apav, he blew into his nostril. That's an awkward place to go, to blow into someone's nostril. I mean, a good kiss is mouth to mouth. It's not mouth to nose, right? So why would he do the nose? Of course, we could say, I mean, what's the difference? That's the way Hashem did it, and we breathe through our nose, but we also breathe through our mouth. So why by Yibach Ba'apav? Why through his nose? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But I'll point out there's a beautiful story. So maybe the story will shed a little bit of light on this. Okay, actually, I'll try to explain it, I think. Later on, we're actually going to see when...
Because we are using mouth for language, so to distinguish language and soul, that's why it goes through nose.
Could be. Good. Very nice. That's very good. Very good. Let me show you something, and you'll find it interesting. Turn to page 15. Look at verse 6, okay? We didn't get there yet. We'll get it when we talk about the tree of knowledge, but it says, the woman perceived, but she saw that the tree was good for eating, and it was a delight to the eyes. And she took the fruit and ate it, right? Mm-hmm. And then she gave it to her husband. There are, how many senses are there? There's seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling, smelling. Every one of these 5 senses was involved in the tree of knowledge except for one. She saw the tree, right, and it was desirable. That means that she used eyesight in not such a good way. She listened to the snake. That means she used the ears in not such a good way. She took the apple or whatever it was, right? So that means she used touch, not so good. She ate it. That means she used taste, not so good. What's the one sense that she did not use negatively? Smell. Smell is the only sense that was not corrupted by the tree of knowledge. In other words, God created man in a way, he gave him a soul, a part of him. So essentially, every atom, every cell that a person possesses is holy. It's sacred. But because, as we're going to read later on, man and woman ate from a tree where they were told not to, so now everything, so to speak, got covered up. It's not pure anymore, it's corrupted. It's a mixture, good and bad. But the one thing that never really was involved in the sin was fragrance. So the rabbis tell us that fragrance or smell is actually a concept of holiness. That is why, actually, I wouldn't be surprised, I'll say this as half-jokingly, the anti-Semites like to identify a Jew by his nose. Maybe there's a little touch of truth, I don't know. Maybe what they're really saying is that the smell, the fragrance that Jewish people consider, smell is actually different than anyone else. For everyone else, smell is used in conjunction with food, or pleasure. For Jews, smell symbolizes a sweet smell to God, but that's a separate discussion. Okay, so we have all of the 4 senses used, but not smell. It is brought down, for example, that one of the signs of the Mashiach will be that when 2 people come to him with an argument, he won't have to hear what they're saying. He will sniff, smell, and know which one of the 2 is telling the truth. And again, this is actually a verse in the book of Isaiah, And some of it came down, trickled down in English literature to sniff out the truth. Right? So maybe they thought they were talking about bloodhounds. But actually, it's actually taken from that the Mashiach will be a person who will be able to judge truth from untruth just by using the smell. Till today, and later on when we get into the Chumash, we'll talk more about it. We'll talk more about Isaac smelling the sweet smell of Yaakov. But even until today, there's tzaddikim have an uncanny sense of smell, not in terms of perfume, but in terms of goodness and not goodness. Okay. And this comes actually from the Zohar. The Zohar tells a magnificent story about two of the greatest rabbis. The Zohar we're talking about Talmudic times, 1,800 years ago, 1,500 years ago. Tells a story about a boy. Two great rabbis came to the town, and everyone wanted to come and get a blessing. So a mother took her child, who was a special little kid, like an 8-year-old, 6-year-old. Come, let's go get a blessing from these great rabbis. The rabbis were blessing all the people, and the boy was not impressed. So the mother says, go get a blessing. And the kid says, are you kidding? They didn't even put on tefillin today. Putting on tefillin is a positive commandment. So I'm not sure if she told the rabbis or they overheard it. And they said, you were right. We did not. We just came from doing a mitzvah of ransoming a Jew. We just saved a life. We didn't have time to put on tefillin. But how did you know? And his response was, I smelt it. A little bit, I smelled it. Now, clearly, this is, these little boys and these little girls in the Zohar are like these, I don't know, they're like little cherubs or something like that. But that's really a story that he smelt it. Okay. One more observation, and then this will answer your question. It's a strange thing, but someone is talking in the back, and what's he saying? Your ear has a desire to hear. Sometimes you're walking down the street, and someone's window shade is up, and your eye wants to look. Okay. Sometimes you see food and you'd like to taste it, right? And occasionally someone likes to take someone else's money. The one thing that really doesn't have a desire is your smell. Think about it. Just think about it. So there's a story told, okay? A story told that well, today everyone is smoking and sniffing, but there was a time when people smelled snuff. Snuff is like a little tobacco, and you go like this, you sneeze and it wakes you up. So basically it was used really to wake up people. It was like smelling salts. But a lot of people, especially very, very special people who spent many hours at night studying, what we get from caffeine, a snuff could do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? He's 3/4 asleep, takes a little snuff, he gives a sneeze, he wakes up. So there was a chassid who wanted to give a gift to his Rabbi. He knew his Rabbi was not interested in cake. His Rabbi was not interested in gold and silver. His Rabbi was interested in staying up and studying. So what he did was he bought a silver snuff box. So it had snuff, but it was, you have to keep it inside. It was a silver snuff box. And he presented it to the Rebbe as a gift. And the Rebbe made a very, very astute observation. He said, every single part of the body has a desire, except for the nose. And you want to create desire for my nose? Okay, what it means exactly, I'm not sure, but there's something superficially that we could get from it. You understand that the nose is really passive. It doesn't really want anything on its own. All it wants to do is breathe. But my eye would like to see what it shouldn't see always. It's curiosity at best and sometimes worse. So now we can understand, by Yipach Ba'apav Nishmas Chaim, when Hashem is going to give a part of himself into a human body, he's going to use an orifice, he's going to use a cavity, or he's going to use a part of the body which is as pure as possible. You understand? In other words, something that's not going to be corrupted or tainted through sin or desire and stuff like that. So by Yipach Ba'apav, through actually the nose. So of course, I can't tell you why God does things, but conceivably he could have done it by putting it in the hand, in the heart, whatever it might be, through the mouth. But because the way God created man and the way man later on unfolds his and reveals his potential, the sense of smell will not be as physical or as corrupted as everything else. Therefore, Hashem uses it as the medium to actually give the neshama. Let's end off with one or two ideas of a person, of a Jewish person. I have never found a more succinct and clear definition of what is a Jew. Maybe I'm just going to mention, this is not on the Chumash, but you should know this. You should know how to answer a question. So someone asks you, so tell me, what is a Jew? Is it a race? Is it an ethnic? Is it a nationality? Is it a way of life? You get all confused. Your answer is a legal answer and then a deeper answer. The legal answer is a Jew is someone who was born from a Jewish mother. That's a legal definition. Or someone who converted to Judaism according to Jewish law. Now, it's really simple, but you have to know that these are legal definitions where you don't have to dance, you don't have to jump, you don't have to do... Someone were to ask you, so, Dr. Krug, what is an American? You understand? An American is someone who stands for the flag. Okay, so we got a lot of people coming from Canada and from Mexico and from Russia and Slovakia. They love the flag of America. Are they American? No. What is American? Someone who speaks English. I could tell you there are hundreds of millions of people who can't speak English. What is an American? You understand? You could go back and forth. You say, well, an American is someone who was born in America and their parents are legal, or he converted. What does that mean? He got citizenship papers. Until then, he's not an American, and the American government has to deal with what do we do with all of those people that are so Americans but without being America. But you understand? But they can't just say they're Americans. They got to figure out a legal something or other to make them Americans. But you understand? To argue what America stands for does not make you an American. So a person will say, I'm not American. Are you kidding? I love Somalia. I hate this country. You know what? But you were born in this country, so you have to pay taxes, and you're born in this country, and you know what I mean? It doesn't make a difference what you feel. Okay, so it's very important. What?
It's the same as Jews.
So that's what I'm telling you. That's why it's very important that you first understand a legal definition. What is a Jew? No, it's not, do I feel Jewish? I act Jewish. I love the holidays. Right. No. A Jew is either your mother was Jewish, and that makes you Jewish, and that means you have the soul because it came through the mother, or you converted the way Jewish people are supposed to convert. Because what makes you Jewish is your Jewish soul. And the only one that gives a soul is God. Okay, so that's the legal definition. You don't have to get involved with what is a Jew? Someone who fasts on Yom Kippur and eats matzah. That's a way of revealing the Judaism or celebrating the Judaism. Okay, but now we have the Rebbe's beautiful definition. Really beautiful. His definition was not to take away from the legality, but to define the essence. What is a Jew? A creature of heaven and earth. It's such a beautiful insight. There are earthly things. Everything around us is earthly. And then there are heavenly things, whether it be an angel, whether it be, I don't know, stars in the moon, maybe, whether it be intelligence, you know. And then there's something that somehow puts heaven and earth together. That is a Jew. A Jew is a creature of heaven and earth. If I asked you to look at the natural world, we would say that, you know, like elephants live on earth, right? And tuna fish are fish. They live in the sea. A tuna cannot live on earth. an elephant cannot live in the sea. Clear, right? No, it's very confusing. Because there are creatures which are called amphibians. Mm-hmm. They live on earth and they live in the ocean, or they live in a lake. So what are they? We give them a name, amphibians. They do both. Kaviyachol, as if to suggest. There are people, which is like 7 billion people are earthly people. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a mountain. There's nothing wrong with a rock. There's nothing more beautiful than a field. Nothing nicer than a human being living a good, decent life. And he's an earthly creature. And then there's like this, the world of spirit, whatever that is. The world of angels, the world. And then there's a Jew. You get very confused looking at a Jew. You touch his hand. He wears clothes. He eats food. He fights for a job. He's just like everyone else. And yet, there's nothing like him. He makes brachas. He believes with faith. He doesn't work this day. He doesn't do this. He's always praying. He's always studying. Make up your mind. Are you a monk? Are you a priest? Are you a holy one? If you're a holy one, what are you doing in IT? What are you doing in Google? You understand? Could you imagine if, if a guy in a Google office or whatever it is, or Amazon, he takes out a Talmud, he's chuckling over it for 2 hours. It's a different language. Go to the synagogue. He says, no, I have lunch break. You have lunch break, so go for a walk, or go out, work in the gym. No. You understand? He's a very confusing creature, a Jew, because he's a mixture of heaven and earth at the same time. At the same time. So this pasuk, and that's why we're going to read it one more time and end with the words of the Torah. Hashem created man. There's a part of him, Afer min ha'adama. There's a part of him which is earth. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. And then he blows into him a soul or a breath of life. Now there are two opposites. There's earth and soul. And together, now he becomes a living creature. If you're a Jewish person and you don't take care of your physical health, you're not a good Jewish person. You're violating the Torah. If you're a person who takes care of your physical health but doesn't pay any attention to your spiritual health, again, you're violating the Torah. The Torah wants you to be healthy in body and in spirit. And we should all be healthy in body and spirit. Okay.